The stars shimmered in the velvety darkness above Earth, oblivious to the quiet chaos brewing on its surface. Most of humanity still slept, their dreams filled with mundane worries, late bills, unspoken words, and hopes for a better tomorrow. But at an isolated military base deep in the Nevada desert, Lieutenant Kate Morales' night had taken a turn for the extraordinary. She crouched beside a jagged metallic object that jutted out of the sand, her gloved fingers brushing against its unnaturally smooth surface. The crash had left a crater the size of a football field, its edges still smoldering, and the object itself emitted an eerie, faint hum that set her teeth on edge. "Lieutenant Morales, you're going to want to see this," called Sergeant Henderson from a few yards away. Kate jogged over, her boots crunching on the scorched ground. Henderson was standing over what looked like a torn section of the object's outer hull, but it wasn't the jagged metal that caught her attention. It was the figure lying motionless just beyond it, a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. The alien's body was slender, its skin a pale, shimmering blue that seemed to ripple in the moonlight. A faint glow emanated from veins running along its arms and legs, and its face was both familiar and foreign. Two large, almond-shaped eyes, a small nose, and a mouth that appeared strangely human. "It's breathing," Henderson said, his voice low, almost reverent. Kate nodded, swallowing hard. "Get the medics out here. Now!" As Henderson radioed for help, Kate knelt by the alien, her heart pounding. This wasn't a hoax, nor was it some misinterpreted weather balloon or experimental drone. This was first contact, actual, undeniable proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. Before she could process the enormity of it, a sharp, guttural noise escaped the alien's lips. Its eyes fluttered open, and for a brief moment, they locked gazes. Kate felt an inexplicable surge of emotion, a mix of fear, curiosity, and something else she couldn't name. The alien raised a trembling hand, pointing weakly toward the sky. "Turkin," it whispered, its voice melodic yet strained. "Danger, coming." Kate barely had time to process the warning before the ground beneath her feet trembled. A low, rumbling sound filled the air, growing louder by the second. She looked up, her breath catching in her throat as streaks of light appeared in the night sky, descending rapidly toward Earth. "What the hell is that?" Henderson shouted, his voice barely audible over the rising cacophony. Kate's instincts took over. "Get everyone back to the base. Now!" The streaks of light resolved into massive, angular ships that hovered ominously in the sky, their surfaces bristling with weapons. A sudden burst of energy shot from one of the ships, striking the ground a few hundred yards away and sending a shockwave that knocked Kate off her feet. She scrambled to her knees, coughing as dust filled her lungs. The alien beside her had gone limp, its glowing veins dimming. Kate clenched her fists, her mind racing. Whoever these Turkins were, they weren't here to make friends. By the time Kate and her team reached the base, it was clear the situation was far worse than they'd imagined. Reports were flooding in from around the globe. Massive alien ships had appeared over major cities, unleashing destruction on an unprecedented scale. The Turkins were merciless, their attacks precise and unrelenting. "Lieutenant, we've got a transmission coming through," Henderson said, leading her to the control room. The screen flickered to life, revealing a Turkin commander. Its appearance was intimidating, tall and broad-shouldered, with deep-set eyes that glowed a fiery orange. Its voice was deep and resonant, filled with menace. "Primitive inhabitants of Sol 3, it began, its tone dripping with contempt. "You have harbored fugitives of the Andral Alliance. Surrender them, and your annihilation will be swift and merciful. Resist, and you will suffer unimaginable pain." Kate felt a surge of anger boil within her. Primitive, that's all they thought of humanity, ants to be crushed underfoot. But as her gaze shifted to the alien from the crash site, now lying on a stretcher with medics working frantically to stabilize it, she realized this wasn't just about Earth. The Andral were running from something far worse, and if the Turkins weren't stopped here, there would be no end to their destruction. "Patch me through," Kate said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Henderson hesitated but complied. "This is Lieutenant Kate Morales of Earth," she said, staring into the camera. "We don't know who you are, and frankly, we don't care. But if you think we're just going to roll over and let you destroy our planet, you're dead wrong." The Turcan commander's lip curled in what might have been amusement. Brave words from a species that barely understands the cosmos. "Your defiance is amusing, but it will not save you." The screen went dark, and moments later, the first wave of Turcan drones descended on the base. What followed was chaos. The base's defenses were no match for the advanced technology of the Turcans. Energy blasts tore through walls, sending soldiers scrambling for cover. But even as the situation grew dire, Kate refused to give up. "Fall back to the armory," she shouted, rallying her team. In the chaos, she spotted one of the medics dragging the injured Andril alien toward a bunker. The alien's eyes met hers, and it raised a hand weakly, its lips forming a single word: "Fight." Kate nodded, determination hardening in her chest. Inside the armory, the team worked frantically to adapt. They scavenged parts from the wreckage of the alien craft, cobbling together makeshift weapons and armor. What they lacked in firepower, they made up for with ingenuity. "Lieutenant, we've managed to rig one of the alien devices," Henderson said, holding up a weapon that glowed faintly with Andril energy. "Good," Kate said, gripping the weapon tightly. "Let's show these bastards what primitive really means." The counteroffensive was brutal. The humans fought with everything they had, using guerrilla tactics to outmaneuver the Turcan forces. They exploited the alien invaders' reliance on their advanced technology, luring them into traps where their systems failed. By the time dawn broke over the desert, the battlefield was littered with the wreckage of Turcan drones and ships. The survivors, both human and Andril, stood together, battered but unbroken. Kate looked around at her team, pride swelling in her chest. They had been underestimated, written off as insignificant, but they had held their ground, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity was far from helpless. As the Andril alien approached her, now able to stand on its own, it placed a hand on her shoulder. "You fight with fire," it said, its voice filled with awe. "The galaxy will remember this day." Kate smiled grimly. "Good, because we're just getting started." The night sky over Nevada was unusually clear, a blanket of stars stretching endlessly above the barren desert. Lieutenant Kate Morales exhaled sharply as she stepped out of the military Humvee, the cold night air biting at her exposed face. The scene before her felt like something out of a nightmare. A massive crater scarred the ground, glowing faintly with an unnatural blue light. Around its edges, the sand had melted into glass. "Lieutenant, you need to see this," called Sergeant Henderson from the crater's rim. His voice carried an edge of unease that immediately put Kate on alert. Climbing to his side, she froze. At the heart of the crater lay a massive metallic object, half buried in the scorched earth. Its surface shimmered, a kaleidoscope of shifting colors that made it almost painful to look at. But it wasn't the object that caught her breath. Just beyond it, sprawled on the ground like a broken doll, was something alive. The creature was humanoid, but not human. Its skin a pale, iridescent blue, its elongated limbs and delicate features unfamiliar, yet strangely beautiful. It was injured, its chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, and glowing veins crisscrossed its arms, pulsing faintly. "What the hell is that?" Henderson muttered, unable to tear his eyes away. "Something not from around here," Kate replied, swallowing hard. Her pulse thundered in her ears, and the weight of the moment pressed down on her. This wasn't a drill or a test. This was first contact. The alien's eyes fluttered open, large and almond-shaped, filled with an intelligence that sent a shiver down her spine. It spoke, its voice weak but melodic, the words strange yet haunting. "Turcan," it gasped, raising a trembling hand to point at the sky. "Coming, danger." Before Kate could respond, the ground beneath her feet rumbled. A low, mechanical whine grew louder, and she spun around to see streaks of light cutting across the horizon, descending rapidly toward them. "Move!" she shouted, shoving Henderson toward the Humvee. The streaks resolved into massive ships, angular and menacing, their surfaces bristling with weaponry. A deafening blast erupted as one of the ships fired, sending a shockwave that flattened the surrounding area. Kate barely managed to dive behind the Humvee as debris rained down. "Lieutenant, what's happening?" Henderson yelled over the roar of engines. Kate clenched her jaw, her mind racing. Whoever the Turkins were, they weren't here for diplomacy. They had come for destruction. Back at the base, chaos reigned. Reports flooded in from across the globe. Similar ships had appeared over major cities, unleashing devastation on an unprecedented scale. Civilians were evacuating, governments were scrambling, and the military was preparing for the impossible. War against an enemy far beyond anything Earth had ever faced. In the control room, Kate stood before a screen displaying the alien fleet hovering ominously in orbit. Her fists clenched as the image shifted to show a Turkin commander, a towering figure with fiery orange eyes and an expression of utter disdain. "Primitive inhabitants of Sol 3. It began, its voice deep and resonant, dripping with contempt. "You have harbored fugitives of the Andral Alliance. Surrender them, and your end will be swift and merciful. Resist, and you will suffer annihilation." Kate felt a surge of anger boil within her. Primitive. That's all they thought of humanity. Insignificant insects to be crushed underfoot. But when her gaze shifted to the injured alien being treated in the infirmary, she realized this wasn't just about Earth. The Andral were running from something truly monstrous, and if the Turkins weren't stopped here, there would be no stopping them anywhere. She stepped forward, meeting the Turkin commander's gaze through the screen. "This is Lieutenant Kate Morales of Earth," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "We don't know who you are, and frankly, we don't care. But if you think we're just going to let you destroy our planet, you're dead wrong." The commander's lip curled in amusement. Brave words from a species that barely understands the cosmos. "Your defiance is amusing, but it will not save you." The transmission ended, and moments later, the first wave of Turkin drones descended on the base. The attack was swift and merciless. Energy blasts tore through walls, throwing soldiers and equipment like toys. Kate barked orders, rallying her team to mount a desperate defense. They fought valiantly, but the Turkin forces were relentless, their technology far superior. "Fall back to the armory," Kate shouted, firing her rifle at an approaching drone. Inside the armory, the team worked frantically to adapt. Engineers tore apart salvaged alien tech, trying to understand and repurpose it. Despite the chaos, there was a spark of hope. Humanity had always been resourceful, and now was no different. "Lieutenant, we've managed to rig this," Henderson said, holding up a weapon that glowed faintly with Andral energy. Kate took it, the weight unfamiliar but reassuring. "Good. Let's show them what primitive really means." The counteroffensive was brutal. The humans fought with everything they had, using guerrilla tactics to outmaneuver the Turkin forces. They exploited weaknesses in the enemy's reliance on advanced systems, targeting vulnerabilities with EMPs and sabotaging their infrastructure. As dawn broke, the tide began to turn. The battlefield was littered with the wreckage of Turkin drones and ships. The surviving Andral alien, now conscious and standing, approached Kate. It placed a glowing hand on her shoulder, its expression one of profound gratitude. "You fight with fire," it said, its voice filled with awe. "The galaxy will remember this day." Kate nodded, her resolve hardening. "Good. Because we're not done yet." The first explosion ripped through the stillness of the Nevada desert, turning the serene night into chaos. Lieutenant Kate Morales didn't wait for orders. Years of training kicked in as she sprinted toward the commotion, her boots kicking up clouds of dust. The crash site was a mess of fire and debris, but something in the crater center caught her eye. The object didn't look like any aircraft she had ever seen. It shimmered under the firelight, its surface smooth and almost organic. And next to it, lying motionless in the dirt, was a figure, humanoid, yet distinctly alien. Kate hesitated for only a moment before vaulting over the edge of the crater. The alien's skin glowed faintly, a translucent blue that seemed alive. It was injured, its chest rising and falling in labored breaths, and Kate felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. Pity? Curiosity? Whatever it was, it evaporated when the alien's eyes snapped open. They were large, almond-shaped, and filled with something akin to terror. It spoke, its voice a strange, musical hum. "Turkin!" it gasped. "Danger! Coming!" Kate didn't understand the words, but the warning was clear. She barely had time to react before the sky lit up with streaks of fire. Massive, angular ships descended like harbingers of doom, their surfaces bristling with weapons. The alien collapsed, its glowing veins dimming, and Kate knew one thing. Whoever the Turkins were, they weren't friendly. Back at the base, the air was electric with panic. Reports flooded in. Turkin ships were attacking cities worldwide, their technology far beyond anything humanity could counter. Kate clenched her fists as she stood before the command center's massive screen. On it, the image of a Turkin commander flickered to life. The alien was imposing, its body encased in sleek armor that shimmered like obsidian. Its eyes burned a fiery orange, and its voice was a low, resonant growl. "Inhabitants of Sol 3, it began, its tone dripping with disdain. You have harbored fugitives of the Andral Alliance. Surrender them, and your extinction will be swift. Resist, and your suffering will be eternal." Kate stepped forward, her jaw tightening. "This is Earth," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "We don't take kindly to threats. You want to fight? You'll get one." The Turkin commander's expression didn't change, but there was something like amusement in its eyes. "Primitive," it said before the transmission cut off. The first wave of attacks hit the base minutes later. Energy blasts rained down, ripping through buildings and sending soldiers scrambling for cover. Kate shouted orders, rallying her team. The base's defenses were no match for the Turkins' advanced weaponry, but they fought back with everything they had. In the chaos, Kate caught sight of the injured Andral alien being carried to safety by medics. Its eyes met hers for a brief moment, and it raised a weak hand, pointing toward a nearby bunker. Kate didn't hesitate. Inside the bunker, engineers were working frantically to dismantle and repurpose pieces of the alien craft that had crashed earlier. One of them, a wiry man named Grayson, looked up as Kate entered. "Lieutenant," he said, holding up a glowing device. "We've managed to adapt this into something resembling a weapon. It's crude, but it might level the playing field." Kate took the device, its weight unfamiliar but reassuring. "Good work," she said, her voice firm. "Now let's show these bastards what primitive really means." The counterattack was brutal. Kate led her team in a series of hit-and-run assaults, targeting the Turkin drones with their makeshift weapons. The Andral tech gave them an edge, but it wasn't enough to turn the tide. The Turkins were relentless, their forces seemingly endless. In the heat of battle, Kate found herself face-to-face with one of the Turkin soldiers. It was taller than her by at least a foot, its armor gleaming under the harsh desert sun. The soldier raised its weapon, but Kate was faster. She fired the Andral device, the blast hitting the Turkin square in the chest. The alien staggered, its armor cracking, and Kate didn't hesitate to press her advantage. By the time the sun set, the battlefield was littered with the wreckage of drones and ships. But the fight was far from over. Kate's team regrouped, battered but unbroken. She glanced at the Andral alien, now conscious and leaning heavily against a wall. "You fight with fire," it said, its voice weak but filled with awe. Kate nodded, determination hardening in her chest. "We're not done yet," she replied. The final assault came under the cover of darkness. Using the last of their resources, Kate's team launched a desperate strike on the Turkin mothership. The plan was risky, bordering on suicidal, but it was their only chance. Inside the ship, the air was heavy with an otherworldly hum. The corridors were sleek and sterile, illuminated by an eerie blue light. Kate led the charge, her heart pounding as they fought their way toward the ship's core. The climax came when they reached the control room. The Turcan commander stood waiting, its fiery eyes locking onto Kate. "You are persistent," it said, its voice cold and calculating. "But persistence without power is meaningless." Kate raised her weapon, her hand steady. "Power isn't everything," she said. "Sometimes you just need guts." The fight was vicious, the room filled with the sounds of energy blasts and the clash of metal. Kate's team fought with everything they had, their determination outweighing their fear. Finally, with a well-placed shot, Kate hit the ship's core. The entire structure shuddered, alarms blaring. "Time to go," she shouted, her team racing for the exit as the mothership began to collapse. They barely made it out before the ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the shockwave knocking them to the ground. Kate lay there for a moment, staring up at the stars, her chest heaving. The Turcan fleet began to retreat, their forces scattering like leaves in the wind. For the first time, it felt like they had won. The Andral alien approached her, its expression one of gratitude and respect. "The galaxy will remember this day," it said. Kate nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Good," she said, "because we're just getting started."